afternoon, Cochin. Today we are discussing about why did all these successful investors invest in Kerala-based startup. Uh, we are starting with like self-introduction. So I myself, Shihab, I was working with Freshworks as a employee number 3 for 6.5 years. I was able to scale from almost 100 square feet small room to probably a 1,500 plus employee company, and probably you'll be seeing the IPO by next year. I left Freshworks and started Survey Sparrow, an online or cloud-based survey software in Cochin. I just came back here 18 months back, and we were able to scale the company in 18 months from 0 to 7,000 customers in 108 countries. And probably just to start the discussion, I would like maybe the panelists to a self-introduction. Maybe we'll start.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Anil Joshi, run fund called Unicorn India Ventures. It's an early stage fund and been quite active investing in Kerala. So far, we have invested in 17 companies, largely tech focused, and happy investing in Kerala.
Hi, I'm Ritesh Malik. I run a co-working startup called Innovate. Have invested in over 43 angel investments, out of which 10 have been in Kerala.
Hi, I'm Amit Somani. I am a partner at a firm called Prime Ventures. We're an early stage fund. We've invested in about 24 companies live to date, a lot in fintech and SaaS. And we've invested in Kerala based entrepreneurs, but not yet in a Kerala based company. So,
Thank you so much for the introduction. And Anil has been involved with Kerala ecosystem for a long time, and being investing especially in robotics side, probably Gen
It will
Robotics.
be incorrect. Ritesh is more involved.
Even Ridesh is like, okay, from starting maybe back in 2014 as well. So the question is, why do you choose? Obviously, it's like you all are playing at a global level and you had all the choices across the world, right? And why did you choose or why did you invest in Kerala?
Also, my fund is very much India focused, so
Okay.
I don't have scope to invest outside India. No, having said that, I think I'd been interacting with the Kerala ecosystem, I think for almost a decade. And during this journey, came across, several interesting ideas. Uh, uh, those days, of course, was an angel, investment platform through which I used to represent. But post we started fund, we had flexibility to invest directly and came across really interesting ideas, right? One of investment of its kind in India nobody is doing is basically have developed a robot to, you know, clean manhole, basically automating the process and avoiding human intervention. It's something on social side, but at the same time very high tech. Invested in a company which is doing smart appliances. So I think the ecosystem here is quite vibrant, quite diversified, right? It's not that you only see company only from one vertical, but came across fairly diversified. So we have company in fintech, other two company in fintech from Kerala, and one is the fastest growing in portfolio as well. So uh, I think what excited us here, the kind of entrepreneurial ecosystem where the involvement is not only from entrepreneurial side, but also other support, largely being supported by government, and that actually gave us more confidence because here entrepreneurs are being supported within a view to help them sustain and grow, and we like that, and that's what led us make investments.
Completely agree. Especially the government this year's top performer in state ranking in terms of uh, startup ecosystem. Kerala was the top performer, and completely agree on terms in what government is doing on this sector. And probably we can hear is like the view from Ridesh.
So for me, the story is very interesting. What attracted me to Kerala was in my final year of MBBS. I'm a doctor, so my village is 300 kilometers from this place. I liked my junior who was a Malayali. So she used to live in Cochin. So because of that, I used to travel to Cochin very frequently. And while traveling to Cochin, I came across this thing called Startup Village. And at that point of time, I had just sold a company to Times of India and thought that let's visit this place called Startup Village. And the moment I saw that place, I felt like this is such a beautiful collaboration of so many like-minded people. And I realized one thing that and that was the time when I realized that I have to start innovate, because I realized that when smart people come together, magic happens. So back in 2013, I had invested in a company called Robotics, which ended up raising capital from Kalari. And I think a very interesting thing about Kerala is the fact that entrepreneurs have a lot of tenacity. They are amazing at hardware, and I think hardware. I have interacted with so many entrepreneurs pan India. No one knows hardware better than Malayali entrepreneurs. I think that is something which is really good. Apart from that, their design sense is amazing. I think these two things are really important when it comes to building a rock solid product. And apart from that, unfortunately, that girl didn't say yes to me. But I was able to make some very good investments in Kerala-based startups. And another very interesting fact is that I have interacted with a lot of governments, whether be it central government, government of Rajasthan, government of Delhi, government of Kolkata, of West Bengal, and no government has been so receptive. Whether it's a communist government or a Congress government, both the governments have given so much focus to startups, and I think that is a very, very important lesson which all the other governments should take back and make sure that we are able to build things like Startup Village, even if it's a failure to start with. That's it.
Thank you. So I also completely, for audience is like, okay, do you know like, okay, some of the best designers, including all the biggest startup, if you take the design team alone, if you take the top three in the design team, mostly you will see Amalu.
Yes.
Whether it is that's a way is like, if you see Ola, if you see it's like, okay, including Freshworks, Yahoo, AOL, wherever you go, take the design team alone and find out is like, okay, who's the top three, and you will see one Malu name in that. That's how it's like, okay, even my experience is completely agree with you. And we'll hear is like, okay, Amin would have been playing on a global level and have seen enough startup being interacting with Malu entrepreneurs as well. Probably, what do you think?
Sure. So we had invested in a company called Maya, which was in the women's reproductive health space a while back. And John, Paul, and his wife actually are from Kochi, and they started it here originally, but they moved to Bangalore when we invested in them. And they had like 7 million users across, several dozen countries. Actually, most of the users, women, were abroad, and this is one app of the year from Facebook and this and that. Recently, they sold to Shiro's, a Delhi-based company. But again, to your point about design and design sense, that was quite extraordinary when I first saw the app. But more interestingly, I think like Ritesh said and Anil as well, I think there are two areas that have excited us about Kerala. One is SaaS. So, I mean, folks like you and Afzal and others coming back here, having built global companies elsewhere. So we're really looking at a lot of interesting SaaS stuff. I think the company out of Trivandrum, the one that Axel did. So there's a lot of interesting SaaS stuff because it's a global playing field. You can be in Kerala or Chennai or whatever. I feel like Kerala, Kochi, Trivandrum, etc., where maybe Chennai was up to SaaS, 7, 8 years ago. And the second is hardware. So I think there's a lot of interest. Every time I come and see a demo here of something in the hardware space, I'm blown away. I think the thing there that one has to figure out is distribution and go to market and how do you build a viable model. But the technology and the IP is actually quite interesting. So I think it will be a couple of these things that will be of big interest to us going forward.
Anil, you've been working with Kerala ecosystem for quite a number of years, right? So, so what is one thing or two things if you want to give an advice to an entrepreneur? How to get a check from me? What would be that?
It's not difficult to get investment from us. I think this is true for everyone, any market, and every market that all investors are basically looking to invest in a company which is highly scalable and have a differentiating factor than maybe their competitive peers. So as long as you are able to solve a real problem which is very scalable and is solving ground level problem, I think that will excite any investor, and I also include in that. So my suggestion to all entrepreneurs in this room is basically do something which is unique and pretty scalable.
How do I get a check from you?
I'm not worthy. I sitting with these guys. I write peanuts. So being a founder, what I've realized is that ecosystem is built when founders invest in founders. And I think one thing which I always tell to especially Kerala-based entrepreneurs is that go and expose yourself, because they have amazing product sense, but they lack at sales and marketing and finance. And I think for this, they need to go out there and expose themselves, go to Silicon Valley, go to Delhi, meet people, and go to Bangalore. But at the same time, tether yourself in Cochin, because this is one of the best cities in the world in terms of quality of life, in terms of lack of pollution, in terms of the fact that you can actually build a startup very frugally over here. So I think take advantage of Kerala, but at the same time do expose yourself and go out.
What do you think?
Yeah, I would say look for large scalable problems, and where you can have an unfair advantage, perhaps being in Kochi. One of course is the talent. So both hopefully attracting and retaining talent, and the cost of talent will be much better here. Bangalore is complete like mayhem and madness, and I think Delhi is getting there as well. So, but I think look for problems which are where there's some unique insights, right? And I haven't spent enough time in Kerala to know, but there's a lot of export-oriented industries here. There's textiles, there is cross-border remittances. So there'll be a lot of unique insights that come from here, but that are of a global nature. I was meeting one of the founders of Remitly, a Seattle-based multi-unicorn company, and they're very big into Kerala for good reason, right? Because they're into remittances, right? And they're sitting in Seattle, global company. I don't know, they launched in 20 countries. And so where you can have unique insight to the customer or some kind of problem here, that's number one. The number two thing I would say is, why is your solution sort of 10x better? And then I would echo what I guess Ritesh just said, which is it's no longer just about the product. I think, and I'm actually a product person, but it is as much and more about distribution now as it is about the product. So you can build the most beautiful product. I mentioned that in the context of the hardware company or hardware companies, but people haven't thought about how are you going to get this to market? How are you going to get distribution? So those are the two, three things. Look for some unique insight where you have an unfair advantage in Kerala, kind of build a 10x solution, which is 10x better, and then right off the bat, look for distribution, which is eminently doable now, sitting anywhere.
So I'll add one more point. I think we all understand scalability and uniqueness, but I think what matters and at the end of the day is execution, right? Uh, I think we all accept that Kerala has been pioneer in bringing up a lot of high-end design products. But no, I think execution is one which need to look at, and maybe you know think from commercialization perspective, because there are many ideas which probably I've seen a couple of years back, and if I see them today, probably at same level.
Yeah.
Wonderful product, great technology, but then sometime you get carried away with innovation and forget the execution. So I think that one thing which I would definitely like to want entrepreneurs here to look at.
Just as a continuation to that question, so as an ecosystem, entrepreneurs, government, everybody is there, and you've been working with them as well. So, what is like, okay, we wanted to get into, for example, many of us were there, and you also in metros, and Bangalore is a startup hub today, then again Mumbai, and probably Noida. So, what does it take for us to be in the same league for Kerala?
Amit, you want to start?
Yeah, I I spent about 14 years in the US in the early part of my career, and most of it in Silicon Valley. And we never thought there was anything in the world outside of Silicon Valley. But now, if you see, after about 10 years, I went to Seattle a few months ago. I was just blown away about some of the activity and well beyond the Microsofts and Boeings and Amazons of the world. I think you have to coalesce around some theme, right? Whether it's hardware, whether it's SaaS, whether it's design-based startups, whether it is, I don't know, cross-border fintech stuff, what have you. So, because I think if you have a little bit of everything, the ecosystem cannot coalesce, right? I mean, you know so much
Agree.
from the Fresh Desk, Fresh Work story. I think Afzal spent some time at Big Basket. So I think you have to see if there is some themes. I'm not saying everybody should work on the same idea, but it's good to kind of build that ecosystem because then you'll see enough people, enough engineers, enough designers, enough marketing people, all having some sort of thing. So I don't know what that would be for us. Certainly, SaaS and hardware are interesting from what we've seen. But I think building some competence, right? So I think Boston, New York ended up being a certain way, Portland, Seattle ended up being a certain way, Austin ended up being a little different. But I think if you try to do like we'll do B2C and B2B and everything else all the same, then it is going to be tough to compete with a Bangalore or a Delhi.
I completely agree. There is a place called Utah, Provo in United States. Probably is like we can hear from Amit's own words. So it's like okay, created last year alone is like okay, they created at least $3 billion companies. Probably is like you can.
If you add Qualtrics, it's even higher. Qualtrics is 8 billion.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think is like okay, where in terms of like okay, we wanted to be at the scale of what is happening in metros.
I think we already are. If you ask me, I think the kind of innovation that's happening in Kerala is something that I personally haven't seen, at least in Delhi, Bombay, or Bangalore. The only thing is that we need to attract more venture capital firms. We are very lucky that we have VCs like Anil sir and Amit sir who have VCs are not looking Kerala as a mainstream opportunity, and that needs to change. And I think also the government can help by not only backing VCs but also backing angels and founders. If an angel, if a founder is willing to write a 2 lakh rupee check, the government should match that check with maybe a 4 lakh rupee check. It's not about the money which a founder invests. I truly believe so. Vijay Shekhar Sharma is an investor in my company. It's not about whether he's invested 6 lakh rupees or 50 lakh rupees. The idea is that the kind of mentorship, the kind of guidance that he has given is priceless. So I think having those founder networks within Kerala is something which is really important. And one thing which I always tell to all entrepreneurs is never ever sell something you wouldn't buy yourself. This is a fundamental thesis of product supremacy. You need to make sure that the product is drool worthy. And I think that is something which Kerala has nailed. More and more workshops of how sales and marketing is done, more and more workshops of how investments are raised, more and more workshops of how to pitch to investors. I think these are certain points where we really need to work now.
And Anil sir?
I'll pick up 2 points which Ritesh have already highlighted. One, I think exposure is very important, right? Whatever you may do, you will still restrict to what you are exposed to. I think government is doing excellent job, but I think exposure to the kind of market you're talking, or maybe outside India, will certainly help opening up entrepreneurial mind, because see, you can guide, but unless until entrepreneur is convinced inside, things will not change, right? So exposure is very important. Second, Ritesh touched upon very interesting, founders investing in founders. And I don't hesitate saying here that local investors need to invest in local companies, right? Free advices are available, but that doesn't help building unicorns. I think if here local investors can start investing, even small amount doesn't matter, and if it is coupled with their time, I think it can really help faster growth. It can really help building good companies from here, which I had been, I think, a lot of efforts I think being made on that. Even Shiva Shankar sir highlighted that government would be, I think, doing maybe another cycle, but but then they want or maybe encourage local investor to invest, because if that happens, that really helps in fueling the, look at Bangalore, the way it has exploded. Look at, Bombay is different, a lot of money, but look at, Delhi, right? Gave example of Vijay Shekhar Sharma, the founders. I think if that happens here, I think the scene would be totally different.
Okay.
I want to add one more
Yeah.
thing, which is that you really need to figure out how to attract talent from outside as well here. And I don't mean just the India ecosystem, although clearly, Bangalore, Chennai might be obvious candidates for people with some roots in Kerala or otherwise interested. But I actually think that also there might be a lot of people who would be willing to and interested to come back from abroad to kind of work here. And I've seen this even in smaller places like Thailand. We had once acquired a company in Phuket, and they had people from 25 nationalities, because Kerala is, like, I used to be in the travel industry for a little bit at Make My Trip. It was like clearly the number one destination in India. So you might find amazing talent willing to come from, US or Europe or wherever to come work here, right? In various areas. We were talking about product management earlier. And so in some areas you might find, so just you have to have a very open mindset to both attract talent from not just kind of the local ecosystem, but from other parts of India and perhaps the globe. And I think it's a very unique opportunity. People won't get that. Like when we saw people from 25 nationalities in Phuket, I was kind of astounded. Right? A company of 40 people. So I think you have that opportunity here, but I don't know what the
This is such a beautiful point. We never think that this is a tourist.
Yeah,
heaven.
find your nirvana in God's own country.
Yes.
That should be our tagline.
Yeah, I tell you, run a campaign like that, even in Silicon Valley, you'll be like, you'll pack a busload of really top global talent, and so I think it's possible. But I think my bigger point is just don't just be restricted to kind of the local ecosystem. Work hard to get talent from outside, because that will also help, to Anil's point, morph your own DNA to think maybe more global, sort of maybe bigger.
Yeah, completely agree with. So Amit has got a point where there was this question asked to one of a friend during a similar kind of session in Dubai. Why Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley? So uh, the answer was, or how do I make Dubai into Silicon Valley? That was a question asked in that particular forum, and he was telling the answer. The answer was like, Silicon Valley embraces everything, right? So when you wanted to, the culture which you are creating, whereas like accepting culture and accepting accepting people from different background, that's something is like, okay, making Silicon Valley, right? So just like that, we do have that opportunity, especially with a tagline like what Amit has told. And there are three, thanks for all your insight for the conversation. And 2 to 3 things which came out was, one is like, okay, don't go after everything, focus on probably hardware or fast or whatever, 1 or 2 verticals and go after it. But probably is like, okay, we can make Kerala as a destination for probably 1 or 2 verticals in terms of, and then obviously it's like founders investing in founders, and then obviously that will attract more talent, always attract talent, and that will attract more investors into the state. And we have a closing time. Before that one, we would like to take some questions from the audience. So the panel is here, and probably any questions?
I think we have explained really well.
If you need, checks, then, it's available. Uh, if you're sleeping, then, checks are getting distributed. Ritesh, you have checkbook? And Amit is always game for Keralite entrepreneur, so.
No questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.